Have you ever felt overworked but somehow utterly underutilized?
Oh, yeah. I think we all have.
Right. I mean, think about that for a second. It is a really strange, almost contradictory feeling. You look at your calendar, and it's just a solid wall of color from, like, 8 in the morning to 6 at night.
Just back-to-back blocks.
Exactly. You are busy all the time. You're constantly in motion, responding to email threads, jumping on calls, putting out fires. You are moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, but getting nowhere.
Yes. At the end of the week, you look back and feel like you haven't actually accomplished anything real. You are making a millimeter of progress, but in 1,000,000 different directions. And welcome to Deep Dive Audiobook English, where we are going to fix that.
It is arguably the defining paradox of modern professional life. I mean, we are doing vastly more than any generation before us.
Oh, for sure.
We have all these tools at our disposal to make us efficient. Slack, AI, project management software, and yet we're achieving significantly less of what actually matters.
It's like we've equated busyness with importance,
Right.
And motion with actual momentum.
Exactly. We confuse the two constantly.
So today's deep dive is going to challenge that exact paradox. We are pulling apart the core philosophy inside Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less.
It's such a vital framework.
It really is. And I want to set the mission for you right up front. If you are listening to this hoping for like a new time management hack or a way to speed read your email so you can cram 3 more projects into your 24-hour day, you are in the wrong place.
Yeah, that's just adding to the noise.
Right. This isn't about getting more things done. It is about fundamentally rewiring how you operate so you can get the right things done. We are going to guide you from that exhausted default state of I have to do it all into the deliberate, highly empowered mindset of less but better.
To really understand the necessity of this rewiring, we have to look at the psychological environment we operate in today.
Okay, set the stage for us.
Well, we live in an era of unprecedented options. Like in previous centuries, your profession, your location, even your social circle, they were largely dictated by circumstance.
If you were born a farmer, you stayed a farmer.
Right, exactly. But today, especially in 2026, with remote work and the gig economy, the sheer volume of choices and opportunities available to a moderately successful person is staggering.
It's completely overwhelming.
It is. And our brains are simply not evolved to filter that much noise without a deliberate system.
I actually like to think of it like a giant closet.
Okay, a closet. Walk me through that.
Imagine you have this closet, and every time you walk by a store, you buy a new shirt, a new pair of shoes, a new jacket. You just keep bringing things home and throwing them in.
Just tossing them on the pile.
Right. We blindly accept new clothes the same way we blindly accept new commitments or projects or social obligations. We never throw anything out.
Because throwing things out requires a decision.
Exactly. So we just keep shoving it all in there, leaning our entire body weight against the door to get it to click shut, and just, hoping the hinges don't break.
That is such a vivid picture.
Well, for a lot of us, the hinges are breaking. Burnout is the hinge breaking. So today, we're learning how to become ruthless, unapologetic closet editors.
I love that. And that is the perfect visualization because it highlights the default state of things.
What do you mean by default state?
Well, a closet never naturally organizes itself, right?
True. I wish it did.
Right. But if you do not actively, intentionally design a system to curate it, the default state of that space is always clutter. Entropy just takes over.
So the same is true of your calendar.
Exactly. Without a curation system, the default state is a cluttered, overwhelming mess. The author of our source material spent years observing the most successful leaders and companies, particularly in the hyper-competitive world of Silicon Valley.
And what did he find?
The pattern he found wasn't that the greatest leaders were the ones who could juggle the most balls. It was the opposite. The people who sustained greatness over decades were the ones who had mastered the art of doing less.
Okay, but to understand how to clean out the closet, we first have to understand why we keep hoarding all these commitments in the first place.
Which leads us to a really fascinating concept.
Yes, the paradox of success. I've always thought of success as this straight line upward. You work hard, you achieve success, and that success acts as a springboard to even more success.
That's the conventional wisdom.
Right. But the author argues that success is actually a catalyst for failure.
It is entirely counterintuitive, which is why it traps so many smart, capable people. We assume success breeds more success. But without rigorous discipline, success actually breeds distraction.
It fragments your attention.
Precisely. And the paradox unfolds in 4 very predictable, insidious phases.
Okay, let's unpack those 4 phases, because I think a lot of people listening are going to recognize exactly where they are on the spectrum right now.
So phase 1 is clarity. You start out with a very clear, singular purpose. Think of a young professional starting a new job, or an entrepreneur launching a startup.
You're hungry, you're focused.
Right. You know exactly what you need to do, and because your energy is highly focused, like a laser beam, you do excellent work. That clarity leads directly to phase 2, which is success.
Your excellent work gets noticed.
Yes, you gain a reputation as a highly competent go-to person.
Which feels great. I mean, you're getting the pats on the back, the performance reviews are stellar. People are realizing you are the person who actually gets things done.
It feels incredibly validating. But here is the trap. Phase 2 inevitably triggers phase 3. New options and opportunities.
Oh, the reward for good work is more work.
Exactly. Because you are the go-to person, everybody wants a piece of your time. Your boss gives you a special task force to lead. A colleague asks you to consult on their project. You get invited to speak at a conference.
And you want to say yes to all of it.
Of course you do. But suddenly, your time and energy, which used to be a single laser beam, are fractured into a dozen different flashlights pointing in completely different directions.
You start saying yes just to maintain that reputation of being capable.
Which drags us right into phase 4. This is where the paradox is fully realized. You are spread entirely too thin.
The quality drops.
Massively. You are no longer making your highest point of contribution on any single thing. Instead of doing one thing exceptionally well, you are doing 15 things just adequately.
You are majoring in minor activities.
I like that phrasing. And the ultimate tragedy is that your very success has undermined the initial clarity that created it.
So the reward for doing great work is just until you eventually crack under the weight of it. That is terrifying.
It's a very real phenomenon.
It means you are quite literally being punished for competence. Like, if you are really good at your job, the organization will naturally load you up with the work of the people who aren't good at their jobs.
Until you become just as ineffective as they are.
Wow, okay. That is the exact mechanism of the non-essentialist trap. And it traps us because we fall victim to 3 deeply ingrained false assumptions, right?
Yes, the author calls these the 3 sirens of non-essentialism.
Like from Greek mythology.
Exactly. Just like the sirens who sang beautiful songs to lure sailors to crash their ships against the rocks, these assumptions sound entirely reasonable, but they destroy us.
The 3 sirens are, I have to, it's all important, and I can do both. Let's break those down. Why are those so dangerous? On the surface, I can do both. Sounds like a really great, ambitious attitude.
It sounds ambitious, but it is a fundamental denial of reality. When you say, I can do both, you are denying the absolute reality of trade-offs.
Because time is finite.
Time and energy are strictly finite resources. Every time you say yes to something, you're implicitly saying no to something else, whether you acknowledge it or not.
And what about the second one? It's all important.
When you say it's all important, you lose your ability to discern the vital few things from the trivial many. If everything is a priority, then by definition, absolutely nothing is a priority.
That makes total sense. But you mentioned the most dangerous siren of all is the first one. I have to.
It is the most dangerous because when you say, I have to, you forfeit your right to choose. You literally hand the steering wheel of your life over to whoever happens to be making the request.
You become a passenger.
Exactly. And this ties into a very famous psychological concept called learned helplessness. I need to explain this term because it's foundational. Learned helplessness is a state where an animal or human learns that their actions have no effect on their environment, so they stop trying to escape pain.
Right, there were experiments on this, weren't there?
Yes, back in the 1960s, psychologists conducted experiments with dogs. They would place a dog in a confined area and administer mild, intermittent shocks.
That sounds awful.
It's tough to hear, but the psychological finding is profound. Initially, the dogs would try to escape. But the researchers structured the experiment so that the shocks were entirely unavoidable. No matter what the dog did, the shock came.
So they realized their behavior didn't matter.
Over time, yes. The dogs learned that their actions had no effect on their environment. They learned to be helpless.
And the really tragic part of that study is what happened next, right?
Yes. The researchers then changed the environment. They put the dogs in a new box with a very low divider in the middle. All the dog had to do to escape the shock was take one simple step over the small barrier.
But they didn't do it.
No. The dogs, having previously learned that they were helpless, didn't even try. They just laid down and took the shocks. They had entirely surrendered their agency.
Oh, wow. And we do the exact same thing in our careers. Drip by drip, bad meeting by bad meeting. We just let our power be taken away.
We condition ourselves.
Yeah, we surrender to that I have to mindset. I have to be on this Zoom call. I have to respond to this email at 9 p.m. We stop looking for the low divider we could just step over, and we become a function of other people's choices.
Which brings us to the author's own very painful realization of this trap.
The hospital story.
Yes. The origin story of this book wasn't born in a corporate boardroom, it was born in a hospital room. The author shares a deeply vulnerable personal anecdote. His wife had just given birth to their daughter.
A huge moment.
Massive. She is resting in the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, holding their hours-old baby. And what is he doing in that profound once-in-a-lifetime moment?
He's on his phone. He's literally checking work emails.
Right.
He is feeling this intense, invisible pressure to attend a client meeting. A colleague had actually emailed him saying, and I can't even believe someone would write this, that it was a bad time to have a baby because they really needed him at this meeting.
The audacity of that email is stunning, and yet he caved. He fell for the siren of "I have to."
He left the hospital.
He left his wife and his newborn daughter in the hospital to go attend a client meeting where, ultimately, nothing of real substance was even accomplished. He admits, looking back, that he went simply to please his colleagues and project an image of dedication.
But the fallout was entirely negative.
Completely negative. By saying yes to please his coworkers, he made a fool's bargain. He sacrificed his personal integrity, he hurt his family on a day he can never get back, and paradoxically, he didn't even earn the respect of the client.
Because the client knew he should be with his family.
Exactly. The client knew he shouldn't be there. That painful moment crystallized his entire thesis. If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will prioritize it for you. But what happens when you try to apply that less but better philosophy in a ruthless corporate environment? Does it get you fired? Well, the answer to that might completely upend how you view your career.
I really want to push back on this, though, because it is very easy for a best-selling author or a wealthy executive to look back and say, oh, I should have just said no.
Sure, hindsight is 20/20.
But put yourself in the shoes of a regular person listening to this right now, someone who is like a mid-level manager or someone just starting out trying to pay rent and navigate a brutal job market.
The stakes are very different.
Yes, exactly. If my boss texts me at 8 p.m. and tells me to jump on a new project on top of my already overflowing workload saying, I choose not to, feels like a really fast track to getting fired. The power dynamic is real. It's not just a psychological illusion of learned helplessness. There are real economic consequences.
That is a very real tension, and it's a crucial point to address. The essentialist approach is not about blind, arrogant insubordination.
So I'm not just telling my boss to buzz off.
No, absolutely not. It is not about telling your boss no out of laziness or spite. It is about fundamentally changing the conversation.
Yeah.
What the non-essentialist does in that scenario is say, yes, I'll do it, out of fear.
Even when they have no time.
Right. But because they are already at capacity, the quality of their existing work drops, the new project is rushed and flawed, and eventually they look incompetent. That is what actually gets them fired or passed over for promotion.
Okay, so how does the essentialist handle that 8 p.m. text from the boss?
The essentialist responds by making the trade-offs visible to the person making the request. Instead of a flat no, the essentialist says, I can absolutely take on this new project. However, my capacity is currently fully dedicated to Project A and Project B. Which of those two should I deprioritize so I can give this new project the attention it requires?
Oh, that is brilliant. You are not refusing the work. You are forcing the organization to recognize the finite nature of your time.
You are saying, I can do these 3 things exceptionally well, or I can do all 10 things poorly. Which problem do you, as my manager, want to have?
You are making them own the trade-off.
Exactly. And while it might cause temporary friction in the moment, over the long term, that level of strategic clarity garners immense respect. People learn that when you commit to something, you actually deliver excellence.
Which brings us perfectly to the philosophical counter-movement to all of this busyness. If we recognize the trap of the non-essentialist, we need a new operating system. And it centers on this incredible phrase, weniger aber besser.
Weniger aber besser. It is a German phrase that translates directly to less but better.
Less but better.
Yes. This was the defining design principle of Dieter Rams, who was the lead designer at the consumer products company Braun for many decades. The author argues that the way of the essentialist is the relentless, disciplined pursuit of less but better.
It's not just a productivity hack.
Not at all. It is a systematic approach to determining where your highest point of contribution lies.
The story of Dieter Rams really makes this abstract idea concrete. Back in the mid-1950s, Rams was a young, 24-year-old architect who had just been hired by Braun. They asked him to help design a new record player.
Now, you had to picture what a record player looked like in 1955.
Right, they were massive pieces of living room furniture. They were encased in heavy, solid wood with ornate detailing, giant lids, and complex dials. They looked like dining room tables that just happened to play music. It was cluttered, heavy, and visually loud.
And Rams approached it from a completely different paradigm. He didn't ask what features he could add to make it stand out. He asked what he could remove to reveal the essence of the machine's function.
He stripped away all the heavy wood, he stripped away the ornate furniture elements, he mounted the turntable and the controls on a simple, flat metal surface, and then he did something entirely unprecedented. He covered it with a clear, transparent plastic lid.
Just the player and a clear lid.
That's it. It became known as Snow White's coffin.
It was so stark, so minimalist, that people within Braun were actually terrified. They thought this radical subtraction would bankrupt the company because it didn't look like anything else on the market.
But it was a huge hit.
A massive success. It became the aesthetic standard for the entire audio industry. Dieter Rams revolutionized industrial design, not by adding more bells and whistles, but by ruthlessly removing the non-essential so the essential function could shine perfectly.
And the book transitions from this industrial design example to a human career example. We have this brilliant case study of an executive who applied Dieter Rams' exact philosophy of less but better to his own corporate life. The author gives him the pseudonym Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott was a highly capable, very successful executive in Silicon Valley. He built a great career, but then his relatively agile company was acquired by a massive, highly bureaucratic, global corporation.
That transition is always tough.
Almost overnight, Sam found himself drowning in the paradox of success. He was trying to be the ultimate good corporate citizen. He was saying yes to every new committee, jumping on every multi-time zone conference call, flying across the country for meetings where he was barely even needed.
He was trying to please everyone in the new power structure.
And his life completely fell apart. His stress level skyrocketed, his commute felt agonizing, and most importantly, his actual core work quality plummeted.
He was too busy going to meetings about work to actually do the work.
Exactly. Things got so bad that this massive new corporation actually offered him an early retirement package. They essentially said, "You clearly aren't cutting it here anymore. Here's a severance if you want to leave."
Which was a massive blow to his ego. He was only in his early 50s. He didn't want to retire. He knew he still had a lot of value to offer, so he sought out the advice of a trusted mentor.
And the mentor gave him a piece of advice that was brilliant in its counterintuitiveness.
What did he say?
The mentor told Sam, "Stay at the company, but from now on, only do what you would do if you were an outside consultant. And do nothing else. Don't tell anyone you were doing this. Just start operating like a high-paid consultant who is only there to solve the primary problem."
It was like a secret experiment in essentialism. He was advising Sam to covertly apply the less but better criteria, so Sam started small. He began evaluating incoming requests with a fairly timid criteria. Can I actually fulfill this request given the time I currently have available?
Which most people don't even ask themselves.
Right. If the answer was no, he just declined it. And he braced for impact. He expected people to be furious, but he noticed something strange. People looked a little disappointed for a fleeting second, but then they moved on.
Because a quick, clear no is always better than a slow, agonizing yes that results in missed deadlines.
Exactly. Emboldened by this, Sam pushed the boundary further. He adopted a much tougher, more ruthless criteria. Is this the very most important thing I should be doing with my time right now? If it wasn't a definitive, resounding yes, he refused.
He completely changed his behavior. He stopped volunteering for last-minute slide deck preparations. He stopped jumping into those massive 50-person email chains where everyone just replies all with their opinion.
Those are the worst.
He looked at his calendar, saw a weekly update call that he had been attending for months, realized he had nothing to contribute, and just stopped dialing in. When asked about it, he literally said, "Just because I was invited didn't seem a good enough reason to attend."
And we have to look closely at the result of this experiment. Did he get fired? Was he pushed out? No. By buying himself all of this mental and temporal space, he suddenly found creative freedom again. He was no longer reacting, he was anticipating.
He started seeing roadblocks months before they happened.
Right, and doing the deep, meaningful work required to bypass them. He started going home at a decent hour. He took his wife out to dinner. His stress evaporated. And the corporate result? His performance ratings actually went up. He received one of the largest financial bonuses of his entire career.
It's just wild. By doing a fraction of the tasks, he became exponentially more valuable. Because his colleagues and his manager were left only with projects that were executed flawlessly and were highly valuable to the bottom line.
Sam Elliott didn't just stop working. That is a crucial distinction. He didn't quiet quit. He stopped doing the non-essential work so he could wildly over-deliver on the essential work.
Okay, so logically, we are all on board. We see the trap. We agree that less but better is the right philosophy. We see that pushing back and saying no can actually increase our value.
But this leads to a massive practical wall. How do we actually know what the essential work is? If we are going to burn social capital to say no to 90% of the things that come across our desk, we better be absolutely fundamentally sure that we are saying yes to the right 10%.
Otherwise, we're just being difficult for no reason.
You have hit on the exact transition point in the philosophy. And it brings us to the first actionable step of the Essentialist framework, which is explore. We must have a system for discerning the vital few from the trivial many.
And the author introduces a concept here that trips up a lot of people. He calls it the exploration paradox.
Right, because if the whole point of this is doing less, you would think an essentialist just puts their head down, ignores the outside world, and grinds away. But the book says the opposite.
The exploration paradox dictates that essentialists actually explore significantly more options than non-essentialists do.
Yeah.
Think about how a non-essentialist operates. An opportunity comes up, and because they operate on default, they just say yes.
They don't weigh it against anything else.
Right. They commit immediately. They don't explore. They just react. An essentialist, on the other hand, knows that they're only going to commit to one or two things out of 100.
Because their threshold is so high?
Because their threshold for commitment is so incredibly high, they have to evaluate a massive, broad set of options before they decide to go big on any of them. They explore more so they can do less.
It makes total sense if you take it out of the corporate world and apply it to relationships. If your goal is to find a life partner, someone you are going to commit to exclusively for the rest of your life, you don't just marry the first person who happens to bump into you at a coffee shop and says hello.
That would be insane.
Right. You date. You meet different people, you figure out what values matter to you, you explore a wide variety of options, precisely because the final commitment is so exclusive. You need a broad sample size to make a truly informed, essential choice.
That analogy maps perfectly. But to explore effectively, to really evaluate all these options, you cannot be running on a treadmill. You have to actively, intentionally create space. Physical space, mental space, and temporal space.
The book talks about how they do this at the Stanford D School, which is the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design. They are famous for producing incredibly innovative thinkers, and when you walk into their classrooms, you don't see traditional wooden desks bolted to the floor in rows.
You don't see comfortable office chairs either.
No, the physical space is intentionally disruptive. Instead of chairs, they use these awkward, uncomfortable foam cubes, and this isn't just an aesthetic, quirky design choice, it is a psychological tool.
If you sit in a plush, comfortable chair, your body relaxes, your posture slumps, and you become a passive recipient of information.
But the foam cubes change that.
After a few minutes of sitting on a backless foam cube, your body naturally wants to move. You want to stand up, you want to pace, you want to walk over to the whiteboard. The physical space forces a new, active way of engaging with ideas. You cannot be passive on a foam cube.
It forces you to design your environment to foster exploration. And in our daily lives, where we don't have foam cubes, we have to design temporal space. We have to literally block off time on our calendars, not for a meeting, not to catch up on emails, but specifically just to think.
Just to exist and process.
Exactly. To read, to evaluate the trajectory of our current projects. If you do not schedule space to think, the noise of the day will always drown out the deep thinking. If you don't create this space, you are going to burn out. You have to ask yourself what you are sacrificing right now. Are you willing to lose your sanity?
And part of that deep thinking involves a very specific kind of listening. The author references Thomas Friedman, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and author. Friedman says his secret to journalism isn't just recording what people are saying.
It's listening to the periphery.
Right. It's tuning his ear to what is not being explicitly said. What is the subtext? What is the fear behind this statement? What data is glaringly absent from the presentation?
But you can't listen to the periphery if your brain is operating at maximum capacity just trying to survive. If your schedule is booked solid in back-to-back Zoom meetings from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with 5 minutes in between to run to the bathroom, you are entirely reactive.
You are just trying to process the explicit words.
You need the mental white space to read between the lines.
Which leads directly to what I consider the most critical and frankly the most scientifically validated point in this entire exploration phase. If you want to have the mental capacity to discern the vital few from the trivial many, you have to protect the asset.
And the asset is you.
Yes, your brain, your body. And the primary mechanism for protecting the asset is sleep. And before we dive into the data on that, I want to mention that bringing you these deep insights takes an immense amount of research. If you want to master these concepts and build a library of the world's best ideas, you need to check out our sponsor. As a listener of Deep Dive Audiobook English, you can click the affiliate link in our show notes to get a free 30-day trial and your first audiobook completely on us. It's the best way to support the show and invest in your own asset.
I am so glad the book goes hard on this sleep issue because it totally destroys the toxic hustle culture myth that we have glorified for the last decade. We all know those people, or well, maybe we have been those people, who brag about surviving on 4 hours of sleep.
They wear sleep deprivation like a badge of honor.
Like it proves how dedicated they are to the grind.
It is a profound biological misunderstanding of human performance. And the author dismantles it by looking at the actual science of elite performance. He cites K. Anders Ericsson's famous psychological study of elite violinists at the Music Academy in West Berlin.
Oh, this is the study that Malcolm Gladwell later popularized in his book Outliers as the 10,000-hour rule, right? The idea that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to master a skill?
Exactly. Gladwell focused heavily on the volume of practice. And what the culture took away from that was, I just need to grind for 10,000 hours. I need to wake up at 4 a.m. and practice until midnight.
Grind, grind, grind.
Right. But they missed the second, equally important data point from that exact same study. Ericsson didn't just measure practice time. He measured the complete daily routines of these musicians. And the data showed that the very best violinists, the ones who went on to become world-class international soloists, slept significantly more than the merely good violinists who ended up as music teachers.
Wait, really? The best ones slept more?
Yes. The elite soloists averaged 8.6 hours of sleep in every 24-hour period. And they didn't just sleep at night. They regularly took scheduled afternoon naps to recover from intense morning practice sessions.
So the absolute elite performers in the world were quite literally sleeping their way to the top. They were prioritizing unconsciousness.
Precisely. Because they understood instinctively what neuroscience has since proven. Deliberate, high-level practice or deep cognitive knowledge work is incredibly exhausting to the brain. To focus intensely enough to actually improve or to solve complex problems, you need a fully restored prefrontal cortex.
So sleep is not a luxury.
It is not an indulgence for the weak. It is a fundamental biological necessity that clears toxic proteins from the brain, consolidates memories, breeds creativity, and most importantly for our discussion, protects your ability to prioritize.
That makes total sense. Think about how you feel when you are running on 4 hours of sleep. Everything irritates you. Every email feels like a 5-alarm fire. When you are sleep deprived, your brain loses its executive function. You lose the ability to discern context.
Exactly.
So a minor typo in a slide deck suddenly feels just as catastrophic as a major client pulling their account. Everything looks equally important, which is the definition of the non-essentialist trap.
By protecting the asset through sleep, you maintain the cognitive sharpness required to look at a list of 50 tasks and immediately identify the 3 that actually matter.
Okay, so we have created the space to think. We are getting our 8.5 hours of sleep. Our brains are sharp. Now we have to actually evaluate the opportunities in front of us. And this is where the author introduces a filtering mechanism that is so strict it almost feels impossible at first.
He calls it applying extreme criteria.
Yes. The core claim here is simple but brutal in its application. If the answer isn't a definite yes, then it should be a no. He calls it the 90% rule.
Let's walk through how this actually works in practice, because this is the tool that changes everything. As you evaluate an option, whether it's a new job offer, a request to join a board, or an invitation to a social event. You think about the single most important criterion for that specific decision. You then score the option objectively between 0 and 100.
Okay, simple enough.
Here is the rule. If you rate the opportunity any lower than a 90, you automatically change the rating to a 0 and you reject it outright.
Wow, so an 85 is a 0, an 89 is a 0.
Exactly. The purpose of the 90% rule is to prevent you from getting stuck in the 60 to 70% range. That is the danger zone. That is the zone of, yeah, sure, I guess that sounds okay. I suppose I could fit that in.
Right. When you operate in that muddy middle, your life fills up with mediocre commitments. The entrepreneur Derek Sivers has a famous blog post about this. He calls his philosophy, hell yeah or no.
I love that framing.
When an opportunity comes your way, if your internal reaction isn't, hell yeah, I absolutely want to do this, then your answer has to be no. Because if you say yes to a pretty good opportunity, you fill up a slot on your calendar. And then a month later, when the true hell yeah opportunity finally comes along, the dream client, the perfect trip, you have to say no to it because your calendar is choked with all the 70% commitments you settled for.
Settling for the good is the greatest obstacle to achieving the great. And the author highlights a fantastic real-world example of a company that operates exclusively on extreme criteria. Have you ever heard of a furniture company called Vitso?
I haven't, no.
Vitso is a remarkable case study. The furniture industry, like fashion, is driven by constant novelty. Every season, companies churn out thousands of new products, new colors, new designs, just to capture attention. Vitso operates entirely differently.
What do they do?
Their managing director, Mark Adams, has guided the company using an extreme essentialist philosophy. For nearly 30 years, they have offered essentially one core product, the 606 Universal Shelving System, originally designed by Dieter Rams.
Wait, one product for almost 3 decades. How does a company survive like that?
They survive and thrive because their criteria for what constitutes good design is incredibly, almost absurdly extreme. The shelving system is modular, it can be adapted to any room, and it is built to last a lifetime.
So it's heavily curated.
Very. If an engineer or a designer at Vitso brings forward a new product idea, it is subjected to this extreme criteria. Does it genuinely improve the user's life? Is it timeless? Is it durable enough to be passed down to the next generation? If it doesn't meet all of those extreme standards, they simply do not make it.
That's a high bar.
By saying no to almost every trend and idea, they have maintained a pristine reputation and grown steadily, profitably, with incredibly loyal customers who keep coming back to expand their systems.
That is the power of a 90% rule. But when we apply this to our own lives, how do we define what makes a 90%? The book offers a really helpful visual framework for this.
Yes, he calls it finding your highest point of contribution. Imagine a classic Venn diagram with 3 overlapping circles. The first circle asks, what is the right thing? This is an exploration of your deep passion. What do you absolutely love doing? What puts you in a state of flow?
The passion circle.
Right. The second circle asks, what is the right reason? This is an exploration of utility. What is actually needed in the world or in your specific marketplace or within your company?
The market need.
And the third circle asks, what is the right time? This is an exploration of your specific, unique talents. Are your skills at their absolute peak for this specific task right now? Your highest point of contribution is the tiny, precise sliver in the very center where all 3 of those circles perfectly overlap.
I think about this like buying a house. If your only criteria for buying a house is it has a roof and it is located in my city, you are going to be completely overwhelmed. You will go to open houses every single weekend for a year. You will look at hundreds of houses and you will hate all of them. You'll be exhausted.
Decision fatigue sets in.
Exactly. But the essentialist approach is to sit down before you ever open a real estate app and define extreme criteria. You write down 3 absolute minimums. Let's say it must be under a specific price point, it must have 3 bedrooms, and it must be within a 20-minute commute to work.
Okay, the baselines.
But then you don't stop there. You write down 3 extreme ideal criteria. It must have a south-facing garden for light, it must have a recently renovated kitchen so I don't have to do construction, and it must be located on a quiet cul-de-sac.
And how did that filter the options?
Now, your realtor brings you a listing. If it doesn't pass all 3 minimums and at least 2 of the extreme criteria, you don't even get in your car to go look at it. You don't waste a Saturday afternoon. The decision makes itself. We've built the criteria, but the actual act of cutting commitments is the hardest part. Coming up, I'll walk you through the exact psychological framework to effortlessly say no without burning a single bridge.
Which brings us to the core of the essentialist action phase, the invisible art of cutting. The author makes a profound point here. Determining what is non-essential is an intellectual exercise. It happens in your head. But actually eliminating those things is a behavioral exercise.
It requires action.
It requires emotional discipline, because it usually requires saying the word no to another human being.
And as a species, we are wired to hate saying no. It feels like we are severing a social bond.
We are deeply social creatures, and saying no goes against our evolutionary programming to maintain harmony within the tribe. The legendary management thinker Peter Drucker once noted that effective people simply say no. They don't hem and haw. But doing so requires pushing against heavy social expectations.
It's so hard in the moment.
Because when someone asks you for a favor and you say yes, your brain gives you a quick, rewarding rush of dopamine. You feel helpful, you feel needed, the person smiles at you. But that momentary dopamine hit is a trap, because it is almost always followed days or weeks later by the crushing regret of realizing you just traded away your finite time for something that doesn't matter to you.
To eliminate effectively without feeling like we are just being selfish, the book says we need an anchor, something to point to that justifies the elimination. He calls it an essential intent.
Exactly. And we need to distinguish an essential intent from the typical corporate vision statement.
Oh, I love this distinction, because I think we have all worked at companies with those terrible, vague, jargon-filled mission statements etched into a glass wall in the lobby. Something like, we strive to passionately synergize global paradigms to deliver maximum stakeholder value through innovative thought leadership.
All right. It sounds grand, but it means absolutely nothing. It does not help a single employee make a decision about what to do on a Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you what to say no to. An essential intent is the opposite.
Oh.
It is both highly inspirational and totally concrete.
Can you give an example?
It is one single definitive decision that effectively makes 1,000 subsequent decisions for you. The author gives a very simple, relatable example. Decided to become a doctor. The moment a college student sets that as their essential intent, a universe of other options is instantly eliminated.
Oh, I see.
They don't have to agonize over whether to take the LSAT or go to law school. They don't have to wonder if they should apply for a summer accounting internship. They don't have to debate taking advanced poetry instead of organic chemistry. The essential intent acts as an automatic filter, stripping away all the non-essential noise.
That makes sense for future decisions. But what happens when we are already trapped? What if I am listening to this and I realize I'm 3 months into leading a project that I now recognize as completely non-essential? I didn't have an essential intent when I started, and now I'm stuck.
That is the most painful form of elimination, uncommitting. And it is incredibly difficult because of a cognitive bias known as the sunk cost fallacy, which is closely tied to the endowment effect. I need to explain these terms so we understand why we get stuck.
Let's break those down. Why is it so hard to just walk away from a bad project?
The endowment effect is a phenomenon in behavioral economics, where humans inherently overvalue things simply because we already own them, or in this case, because we have already committed to them. In classic experiments, researchers give half a room a cheap coffee mug and the other half nothing.
Okay.
Then they ask the people with the mugs how much they would sell it for, and the people without mugs how much they would pay for it. The people who randomly receive the mug demand a price twice as high as what the buyers are willing to pay. The mere act of possessing it inflated its value in their minds.
Wow, just because it was theirs.
We do the same thing with bad projects. Because we have invested our time, our reputation, or our company's money into it, we endow it with false value. That leads to the sunk cost fallacy. We continue to pour good money and good time after bad, simply because we hate admitting that the initial investment was a waste.
So how do we break the spell of the endowment effect?
The Essentialist asks a killer, perspective-shifting question to break the bias. You look at the failing project and ask, if I weren't already invested in this project, how much effort or money would I be willing to invest in it now?
That changes everything.
If you pretend you are stepping into the role fresh today and you look at the data, would you launch this project? If the answer is no, or if the answer is 0, then you must summon the courage to cut your losses, apologize if necessary, and uncommit immediately.
Which brings us to a really fascinating analogy the author uses for leadership. He compares the role of an essentialist to a specific profession, a film editor or a chief editor. He draws heavily on Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter and Square. Dorsey literally defined his primary role as CEO, not as chief executive, but as the chief editor of the company.
It is a profound shift in how we view leadership. Think about what a film editor actually does. They don't create the raw footage. The director and the actors create hundreds of hours of messy, noisy footage. The editor's job is subtraction.
They cut away the excess.
They take those hundreds of hours and ruthlessly cut away anything that distracts from the core narrative arc. Even if a scene is beautifully shot, even if it cost $1 million to film, if it doesn't advance the plot, the editor leaves it on the cutting room floor.
And Dorsey did that with his company.
Dorsey viewed his role the exact same way. His engineers and designers were bringing him thousands of ideas and features. His job as chief editor was to strip away the noise to make the core value proposition of the product perfectly clear. It echoes the famous advice given to writers by Stephen King: kill your darlings. You have to be willing to eliminate things you love if they don't serve the essential intent.
I love the poetry of that. Kill your darlings, being the chief editor of your life. But let's bring this down to a very mundane Tuesday afternoon reality. Editing sounds great when you're making a movie or designing an app, but how do you edit in real time? Let's say I am CC'd on a massive 50-person email chain at work.
Those are notoriously awful.
Right. There's a minor crisis, everyone is panicking, and the replies are flying in every 2 minutes. People are throwing out half-baked ideas, looping in other managers. It is chaos. How do I edit my life right there in the moment without looking like I am totally dropping the ball or ignoring my team in a crisis?
That is a great scenario because it highlights the difference in instinct. The non-essentialist instinct is to jump into the fray. You feel the anxiety of the group, so you hit reply all. You add your own half-baked idea, or you just say, following up on this, simply to prove to the chain that you are engaged and working hard. You add to the noise.
So what does the Essentialist do?
The Essentialist exercises the power of restraint. Editing isn't always aggressively deleting things or shouting no. Sometimes editing is the deliberate, disciplined decision to just wait. You observe, you let the chain play out. You realize that out of those 50 people, 2 of them actually have the authority and knowledge to fix the problem.
So you intentionally do not hit reply.
You practice continuous micro-elimination. And more often than not, an hour later, the problem resolves itself, and you have saved yourself an hour of manic, non-essential stress. You edit by choosing not to act.
It's the restraint to not add to the clutter, and a massive part of maintaining that restraint is setting structural boundaries. The book highlights Clayton Christensen, the legendary Harvard Business School professor and author of The Innovator's Dilemma. He had a very strict, uncompromising boundary regarding his time.
Yes, Christensen decided early in his career that his family and his faith were his absolute essential priorities outside of work. So he set a hard boundary. He would never, under any circumstances, work on Saturdays or Sundays.
Which is incredibly hard in consulting.
And the book tells the story of when this boundary was severely tested. Christensen was working as a junior consultant at a prestigious firm. A senior partner came to him late on a Friday and demanded that he come into the office on Saturday to finish a critical project for a major client.
Which is the ultimate test. As a junior employee, defying a senior partner is terrifying.
Exactly. But Christensen didn't bend. He calmly but firmly explained his boundary. He said he would work until midnight on Friday and he would be back early Monday morning, but he did not work on weekends. The partner was furious. He pressured him, he threatened him. But Christensen held the line.
Did it work?
Here is the lesson. Because he held that boundary under pressure, the partner eventually backed down. And more importantly, that boundary was never questioned again for the rest of his tenure at the firm. People respected it. Boundaries are not walls that trap you. They are empowering filters. They act as automated editors, rejecting non-essential requests before they even reach your desk, so you don't have to burn willpower saying no every single time.
Okay, so we have explored, we have evaluated with extreme criteria, we have eliminated the non-essential, and we have set boundaries to protect our space.
The final step is where the rubber meets the road. Execution, getting the vital work done.
This is where everything comes together. But as we transition into this final phase, the author points out that an essentialist doesn't execute the way society tells us to. There is a fundamental difference between how a non-essentialist works and how an essentialist works. It's the difference between forcing a system and designing a system.
The non-essentialist relies on brute force. When faced with a challenging project, their only strategy is to push harder, to stay up later, to drink more coffee, to muscle through the friction. And that works, well, for a short period. but eventually the friction burns you out.
That's not sustainable.
The Essentialist takes a completely different path. They take all the time and energy they saved by eliminating the non-essential, and they invest it up front into designing a frictionless system. Instead of asking, how can I push harder, they ask, what is the obstacle and how can I remove it?
To illustrate this, the author pulls one of my favorite analogies from a classic business parable called The Goal, written by Eliyahu M. Goldratt.
It is a brilliant illustration. In The Goal, the protagonist is a manager named Alex Rogo, who is desperately trying to turn around a failing manufacturing plant. The plant is constantly missing deadlines and everything is backlogged.
Right.
Over the weekend, Alex is volunteering as a scoutmaster, leading a troop of young scouts on a hike through the woods. They need to reach their campsite before dark. But the troop is moving incredibly slowly. The line keeps stretching out, fast kids running ahead, slow kids falling behind.
The pace is all wrong.
Alex realizes that the problem isn't the troop as a whole. The problem is one specific scout named Herbie. Herbie is the single slowest hiker in the group. He is the bottleneck. No matter how fast the kids at the front walk, the troop as a whole can only arrive at the campsite as fast as Herbie can walk.
So how does a non-essentialist solve the Herbie problem?
The non-essentialist stands at the back of the line and yells at Herbie to walk faster. They try to motivate him or threaten him or physically push him up the trail. They apply brute force to the bottleneck.
But Alex Rogo takes the essentialist approach.
Yes. Alex stops the hike. He brings Herbie to the front of the line so the troop stays together. But more importantly, he looks at why Herbie is moving so slowly. He discovers that Herbie's backpack is incredibly heavy. It's packed with canned food, a heavy tarp, cast iron pans.
Poor kid.
Alex doesn't yell at Herbie. He simply opens the backpack, takes out all the heavy items, and distributes them among the faster, stronger kids in the troop. Instantly, Herbie's burden is lifted. He walks faster. And because the bottleneck is moving faster, the entire troop moves faster and reaches the destination with ease.
It is such a profound shift in perspective. In our own lives and in our teams, we have to find our Herbie. If you are writing a book and you are stuck, the non-essentialist just stares at the blank screen and tries to force the words out. The essentialist steps back and asks, what is my Herbie? What is the primary constraint?
Exactly. Find the constraint.
Maybe your phone is constantly buzzing. The phone is the heavy backpack. You don't need more willpower. You just need to put the phone in another room. You remove the obstacle.
It is exactly like driving a car with the parking brake accidentally engaged. The non-essentialist approach is to just slam your foot harder on the gas pedal. You make a ton of noise, you burn through fuel at a massive rate, there's smoke everywhere, and eventually you destroy the engine. The essentialist approach is to simply reach down, identify the friction, and release the parking brake. The car glides forward effortlessly.
And there is a deep philosophical root to this idea of effortless execution. The author connects this to ancient philosophy, specifically to Aristotle, and later explored by Martin Heidegger.
Yes, it connects to the Greek concept of poiesis. I want to explain poiesis because it's beautiful. Poiesis is often translated as bringing forth. Heidegger contrasted this with modern industrial thinking, which is about challenging forth or forcing nature to yield.
So it's a gentler approach.
True. Elegant execution isn't about challenging the world and violently forcing your will upon it. It is about poiesis. It is about bringing forth the desired result by carefully removing the constraints that are holding it back. It is gardening versus manufacturing. A gardener doesn't physically pull the stem of a plant to force it to grow taller. That would kill it. A gardener removes the weeds, ensures there's water, and allows the plant to naturally bring forth its growth.
And the ultimate way we bring forth our essential work is through the genius of routine. If we want execution to be effortless, we have to make the essential work the default path of least resistance.
Routine is the mechanism that bypasses willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. If you have to consciously decide every single morning to work on your essential project, eventually you will have a tired day and you will fail. But if you build a routine, if you always write for 1 hour at 7 a.m. while drinking your coffee, it becomes encoded in your basal ganglia. It happens on autopilot. The routine enshrines the essential.
But to execute that routine, we have to actually be present. And this is the final piece of the execution puzzle. The author talks about living in the now. He shares a story about a highly successful collegiate basketball coach named Larry.
Coach Larry Gelwix. He had an astonishing winning record over his career. And his secret wasn't just physical conditioning, it was a mental framework he drilled into his players regarding focus. He defined losing in a very unique way.
How did he define it?
To Coach Larry, losing wasn't about being outmatched in physical skill by the other team. He taught his players that you lose the moment you lose your focus on what is essential in the present moment. If a player misses a shot, as he runs back down the court on defense, he is still replaying that missed shot in his head. He is not in the now, he's in the past. And because he is in the past, he is going to miss his defensive assignment in the present.
He called it playing win what's important now.
It's exactly win. What is important now? Not what happened 5 minutes ago. Not the score at the end of the game. What is the essential action required of you in this precise second? Execution happens in the present tense. Non-essentialists live in the past, regretting mistakes, or in the future, worrying about outcomes. Essentialists ruthlessly focus their attention on the exact step they are taking right now.
This brings us to the synthesis of everything we've talked about today. We've covered a massive amount of ground, from psychology to industrial design to ancient Greek philosophy. How do we pull all of these threads together into a single, cohesive worldview?
Every insight we have discussed ultimately points to a single fundamental identity shift. The shift is this: you are not the victim of your commitments. You are the editor of your life. Think about the progression of the framework. We started by recognizing the paradox of success, how gaining options actually traps us in a state of learned helplessness. To break out of that trap, we learned from the Stanford D School and Anders Ericsson that we must actively protect our asset, prioritizing sleep, and creating space just to see clearly. Once we had that clarity, we applied the extreme, brutal criteria of the 90% rule. We learned from Dieter Rams and Vitso that less but better requires saying no to the merely good. We embraced the emotional courage to be the chief editor, using our essential intent to cut away the noise.
And then execution.
And finally, instead of forcing execution through burnout, we looked for our Irby. We released the parking brake, removed the heavy backpack, and allowed the work to be brought forth effortlessly through routine and radical presence. The common thread binding all of this together is the triumph of proactive design over reactive default.
Let's paint a picture of the contrast. What does a life look like when you don't do this? When you just listen to this conversation, nod along, but change nothing and stay on the default path.
Without these principles, your life remains a constant, exhausting state of triage. You wake up, you look at a calendar that is entirely dictated by other people's priorities, and you step onto a treadmill of pleasing everyone around you. You will likely achieve minor, fragmented victories in a dozen different directions.
But no major breakthroughs?
But then, 10 years go by. You look back and realize you never wrote the novel you always talked about. You never started that business. Or, most tragically, you were physically present but mentally absent for your children's formative years. You might look successful on paper, but you feel entirely unfulfilled. You lived a life designed by default.
But when you actually apply this, it looks entirely different.
When you become an essentialist, you wake up and your calendar has space. You have a few deeply important blocks of time protected by absolute, unquestioned boundaries. When requests come in, you evaluate them against your highest point of contribution. You say no frequently, but you do it with grace. And surprisingly, people respect you more for it, just like they did Sam Elliott. When you do commit, you execute your vital work smoothly because you've removed the friction. You are no longer rushing. You are actually in control of the narrative arc of your life.
The author leaves us with a final, profound historical example of what a life of extreme essentialism can produce. He points to the legacy of Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi lived a life of undeniable, immense, world-changing contribution. And he achieved that monumental impact precisely by ruthlessly stripping away everything non-essential.
He was the ultimate essentialist.
He really was. He reduced his physical possessions to almost nothing. He wore homespun cloth. He spent hours in silent meditation to clarify his intent. He lived a life of extreme, concentrated focus. As the author states so perfectly, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. The ultimate gift of this philosophy is giving you the permission to finally be the one who chooses.
It is the realization that the ability to choose cannot be taken away. It can only be surrendered. The essentialist simply stops surrendering it.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought, a challenge to explore on your own that builds directly on what we've just discussed. I want you to pull up your calendar for tomorrow. Just open it up on your phone or your computer right now.
Take a real look at it.
Scan through the blocks of color. I guarantee you can find at least one commitment, a meeting, a sync-up call, a lunch that you accepted purely out of default social pleasing. A meeting where you know you don't really need to be there. A task that isn't your highest point of contribution.
There's always at least one.
Ask yourself, if you were to send a polite email and cancel that one commitment right now, Would anyone actually be materially hurt? Or would you simply win back an hour of your finite life? An hour you could redirect towards your actual essential intent. Think about what your week would look like, what your career would look like, and what your stress levels would look like if you made that trade-off every single day. Be the editor. That is our deep dive into the disciplined pursuit of less. We'll see you next time on Deep Dive Audiobook English.